Generation 7, Pokemon Sun and Moon serve as a very interesting shift and point in the Pokemon franchise history. A lot of things after this game really ended, and there is a stark difference, I gotta say, between Pokemon Sword and Shield and Pokemon Sun and Moon. There's a clear franchise shift for a variety of reasons, some obvious, some more for the fans. Well, fans care about more than others. Let's talk about it. What's good, YouTube? It's your boy T-Flame, T-Fuego, T-Get It Out Till I Can't Get No More. And today we're going to be talking about Generation 7. I have all the games, but I could not, for some reason, find my copy of Pokemon Sun or my copy of Pokemon Ultra Moon. So I just have Pokemon Ultra Sun and Pokemon Moon, but I have all the games, I just can't find the cases. So I'm going to hold this up when I'm talking about Sun and Moon, and this when I'm talking about Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, just as, like, things to keep me, like, sort of focused. But I'm a very visual person. I talk with my hands. How to learn Spanish. But anyway, with my teachers spoke like with their hands. Okay, anyway, Pokemon Sun and Moon, bruh. Listen, it was the last time in the series where, of course, people talk about Dexit, the National Dex. This was the last time every single Pokemon up until the point was available, right? But that's not really the focus of the video. What I want to focus on is, do Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon really need to exist? Should they have existed? That's my thing. That's the main thing we're going to focus on today, because this was the last time we saw a third version of sorts. This Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon were similar to Black 2 and White 2 in that there were two versions, but essentially it was not like Black and White 2, because this was not a sequel. This was like Pokemon Platinum, Pokemon Crystal, Pokemon Emerald, Pokemon Yellow. This was that, but split into two games. Because, at this point, we hadn't had a single version Pokemon game for a long time at that point. Pokemon Platinum was the last single version Pokemon game, which is kind of funny that the next time we got a single version mainline Pokemon game that was just one version was also Gen 4's Legends Arceus. But when you look at Sun and Moon versus Ultra Sun and Moon, Pokemon Sun and Moon, pretty much everything you can do in here, you can do in here, right? So it's like there wasn't even, like, with Platinum, the focus was Giratina. Here, you could get, like, the cover legendary, right? You could get Solgaleo and Lunala and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon and Necrozma, but now you can do more things, right? It's like, really, if you play through Gen 7 again, there's no real reason to play Sun and Moon. You should always play Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, because there's just more stuff in this game. This is a more complete game. The post-game of Pokemon Sun and Moon was literally, you get to Battle Red. You can Battle Red in this game. Older Red and Green. The Battle Tree, you get to catch what? What were the post-game legendaries? I think, a couple of the other Ultra Beasts, like Guzzlord and things like that, were post-game legendaries. But instead, to here, they're not post-game, right? So this is just a complete game. You can explore Ultra Space, right? There's just more to do. Look at the back of the boxes for both of these. Look at how much more stuff is here. This is what the Alola playthrough was supposed to be. And so when these games are released back to back, I know there was a rumor at the time, if you were a Pokemon fan at the time, Pokemon Stars, which was the rumor that Pokemon Sun and Moon were going to be put onto the Switch and be titled Pokemon Stars. Now, if this was the first Pokemon game on the Switch, I think a lot more people would have been receptive to Sun and Moon, because it would have been cool. We got part of the experience here, and this game already was pushing the 3DS to its limits. This game lags on the 3DS very badly. If you had the original 3DS and you tried to play through this game, it would struggle. The newer 3DS is not that much, but these games really started to push the limits of the 3DS, and you could really see it in Ultra Sun and Moon. Because in Sun and Moon, both of these games were for the 3DS, but none of them had 3D capability. None of them did. And so, I don't know why they both say 3D mode. None of these have 3D mode, right? And so, they did that because these games were just so massive. But when you look at it, another thing that was interesting is up until now, before Sun and Moon had a lot of hype because in 2013 we had Pokemon X and Y. 2014 we had Pokemon Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, and in 2015 we didn't get a Pokemon game. Pokemon Sun and Moon came out in 2016 when we had a year of no mainline Pokemon games, which was the last time this happened. Now we're at a point where it's happening again in 2025, which is kind of interesting because Sun and Moon had that year gap, and then Pokemon Sun and Moon was the end for a lot of things in the franchise. It was the last game on the 3DS, right? The last ever DS Pokemon game, because Nintendo's moving on from the DS as a whole, so this was an end point in the series, and Ultra Sun and Moon really encapsulated that by letting you battle all the bad guys from the previous games, right? All the evil teams, right? And so that, if that's any indicator, that's an indicator that, there should be, Pokemon Legends ZA may be the stop for a lot of things in the Switch. Maybe we're getting ready to hit another big change in the Pokemon landscape. But back to Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, if there was a year gap for Pokemon to develop something, you would think the game we would have gotten would have been this and not both of these. Because this, Pokemon Sun and Moon aged so bad because Ultra Sun and Moon exists. And Ultra Sun and Moon exists, Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon ages bad because a lot of people probably have never played this game, because why would they play this if they already played Sun and Moon? Which is like, this is like Sun and Moon, but with just like DLC and a little extras. Like, Sun and Moon is similar to Sword and Shield a little bit, to be honest, except instead of having the DLC be downloadable, you have to play through the whole game again to get to the DLC. That's the biggest similarity between the two, because base Sword and Shield is not great, but with the DLC it's a little better. But when you look at it, it's like, if you had a year to develop, why not? You'd think it would have been like, okay, release Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon as Sun and Moon. So Sun and Moon, imagine if Sun and Moon, instead of being Sun and Moon, was Ultra Sun and Moon, the games that we got those. Right? Take a year break, right? But after Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, we had Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. But I think it would have been cooler if maybe release Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. That would kind of mess with it, because then, if in 2017 they didn't release Ultra Sun and Moon, and then the first game back in 2018 was Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, people would have been like, you took a year developing this. But I think, maybe if you didn't do Ultra Sun and Moon, you would have had a year, of extra year of development. You could have had Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee come out earlier. Maybe Let's Go comes out in 2017 instead of 2018, right? And then Sword and Shield can still come out in 2019, but has a lot more to it. Sword and Shield could have been polished a lot more. It's kind of interesting that you see, even with a year gap, you still had the need for another version, almost as if there wasn't enough time to put all of the content in here, in original Sun and Moon. It's kind of like you get a year gap. So, from our experience, we know that a year gap doesn't inherently mean... I mean, Sun and Moon were great when they were released, right? I gotta say, a year gap and having Sun and Moon, I loved it. But then getting Ultra Sun and Moon after that, it's like, was the year gap for perfecting Sun and Moon or Ultra Sun and Moon? Or like, you still needed more time, so you needed to do Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon? I just want to know when in development it was decided to just make a whole nother game. Like, and part of me just thinks like, Alola, like, imagine if this was the first Switch title. Like, I get it. Like, I mean, it would have been cool because it's the most different Pokemon game. There's not gyms, there's Island Trials, right? And so it's a big jump from the 3DS to the Switch. Having this be the first game on the Switch, flush it out. The only open world part in the in Sword and Shield was the wild area, right? But like, most of Sword and Shield was linear, just like you were playing it on the 3DS. So just having a little bit bigger 3DS type game on the Switch, and you have it be a more difficult version, like this would have been cool. But then again, you know, if Ultra and Ultra Moon came out on the Switch, it would have to have come out right after Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, because if we move Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee to 2017, right, and then we do Ultra Sun and Moon in 2018 on the Switch, that might have taken a little bit more time to develop than just like 1 year, right? And then Sword and Shield would have had to come out the next year. But I would have argued that maybe, I don't know, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon would probably be easier to put on the Switch because it's like a little bit of an upscale, right? But I don't work as in a company. I'm just thinking like it's just real interesting to see that the last third version game that we have was kind of like every third version is memorable for some reason. Yellow is memorable because of Pikachu. Crystal is memorable because of Suicune. And then what? Emerald because Crystal, Suicune, Emerald, Rayquaza, Platinum, Giratina. But Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, Ultra Necrozma doesn't stand and is not nearly as memorable as those other games. It's interesting that the last sort of third version is not really remembered in the same way as those games. It's a lot of times people remember Sun and Moon and talk about that rather than be like, oh, Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. It's not like people remember both, and if they do, they probably only remember Sun and Moon. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon aren't really talked about in the same way as Sun and Moon, right? And that's interesting because Ultra Sun and Moon is the more complete game, right? And so it's interesting to see as, the 3DS is finally getting a little bit of love now that the servers are shut down. There's a little blimp of we love the 3DS again, right? But as the years progress, as the years pass, I said years progress. As the years pass, it's going to be even more interesting to see how, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon versus Sun and Moon ages. Because it's like, there's just, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon is the more complete game, but not a lot of people played it because it's literally Sun and Moon 2. Well, Sun and Moon 1.5. It's like Sun and Moon the complete edition. It's like, honestly, this feels like a remake to this game, right? It's just, there's quality of life features in here, which is crazy. Like, within a generation to have such a leap, Diamond and Pearl to Platinum, there were fixes in Platinum, but Platinum still felt like Diamond and Pearl. Emerald still felt like Ruby and Sapphire. Crystal still felt like, Diamond and Pearl. This feels a lot like Sun and Moon, right? But the stuff that they add makes it feel like it's like the stuff they would put in a remake. Like the Delta, the Ultra Beast stuff is almost like the Delta episode in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. Like these games are technically the most similar, but I think because they're the most similar, they're the most unnecessary, right? That's the point I'm trying to get at. Like I just don't think Sun and Ultra Moon were inherently that necessary when you look back in retrospect, right? Because it's like, why would you play this and not this? Like, especially now that the 3DS servers are shut down, so you can't like Wonder Trade or trade like that. Whatever you have in these games is all there is, right? And so here you got more Pokemon. It's like these games killed these games, right? But I guess, like, if you had to go back and play Gen 4, people would play Platinum rather than Diamond and Pearl. People would play, you know what? I don't know if people would play Crystal over Gold and Silver. And I think, people would play Emerald over Ruby and Sapphire. But Ruby and Sapphire, all these games still have their own identity. Sun and Moon is just messy. So, anyway, that's my rant. I just want to talk about, like, how Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon really, they need to exist. I guess if you say no, then the argument could be, well, does any extra version deserve to exist? But I think with this one, it just is like the most unnecessary, And I get that's a subjective opinion, but when you just look at all the third version games, right? Especially the fact that this was coming off of Pokemon Black 2 and White 2, which were a sequel, right? Seeing that, that's what we were coming from, which I get love for Pokemon Black 2 and White 2 was a very new thing. People hated those games when they come out, which is probably why Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon were like a redo, like a third version, um, rather than a sequel. But a sequel to Sun and Moon probably would have been aged a whole lot better, which is funny now that the thing that didn't do well at the time, which is Black 2 and White 2, aged a whole lot better than the game that was probably the better decision at the time, if that makes sense, right? So, like, making the sequel to Black and White ages a lot better than making Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Maybe that's my conclusion I came to at the end of this video. Anyway, I'm T Flame. Talk about whatever I want for whatever amount of time. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you on the next video. Peace.